Hello everybody, welcome to number 27. I'm Jack and this is a BMW 525 iX. Now when this E34 5 Series first came out, BMW was riding high. They basically almost invented the sporting upper executive sector. They had the best handling car, probably the best built. Why then did they feel the need to bring out another car? They already had the normal 525i, remember? They brought out another version which was heavier, slower and less efficient. The four-wheel drive system doesn't objectively seem to add that much. Of course, I understand if you're living in Switzerland in the mountains or whatever, it would have some advantages, but on the whole, seems like a little bit of a retrograde step. But as well as appealing to those people who use these cars in the snow, there was another, less obvious reason linked to the States as to why BMW decided to produce this car. More about that later. First, let's take it out. I'll tell you a bit more history and we'll see how it drives. The E34 was a big leap forward for BMW. They made more than 1.3 million of these, and incidentally the iX, the 4x4 version, they only made 9,200 of, so it's a very, very rare car. The E34 also is class leading in terms of aerodynamics, CD of just 0.3. It was developed with the then new 7 Series, so it shares quite a lot of the design elements, and also unusually for a car of this class, it had a huge variety of engines, going from a 1.8 4-pot to a 4-litre V8. This is the 525. Let's just take it through the gears here and see if that four-wheel drive system has blunted the performance. Well, it's not a ball of fire. That's not really what these were about though. This is also a touring, which meant extra weight, and the four-wheel drive system adds weight and obviously also friction. So 90 kilos, I think that this was heavier than a normal non-4x4, and then I've forgotten now, I'll put on the screen how much the touring added to the normal car. So it is quite bulky, and I think even the manual version, 0 to 60, is 9.6 seconds. It used a Ferguson four-wheel drive system. The earlier cars had a limited slip diff at the back. I think from the facelift onwards, I think it's 93, they had an open diff, and one of the first systems which used the brakes to emulate an LSD. There are other idiosyncrasies of this model. In order to make it four-wheel drive and to make everything fit, the front end is actually different from the standard E34s. It has the front wishbones and the steering from the 325 iX. So unlike all the other 5 Series of that time, it doesn't have recirculating ball steering, it has a rack and pinion steering rack, which supposedly does improve feel. And I think it does, although that sort of vagueness around center is definitely still very much there, and it still isn't, like in almost every BMW I've driven, the steering still isn't one of its top plus points. Now, if you compare it to what else was around, this was really leagues ahead. The competitors from the French, from the Italians, from the Brits just couldn't hold a candle to this as a sporting saloon. Not only did this handle better, it was better built, you had a massive range of engines, but it also had it seemed to have been built without compromise. So everything was done as they wanted. The way the instruments were angled towards the driver, the quality and the feel, the ergonomics, it was really unrivaled. So it was quite a confusing thing for them to add this 4x4 system to it. Audi were obviously known for that, BMW weren't, and having rear-wheel drive, they didn't need to use the four-wheel drive so that it could handle the power of the bigger engines. Let's see first of all if it has impacted the car. We've already seen that it's not very fast. It's definitely slower than a standard 525i. Now the straight six in this form produced 192 horsepower. It's quite a cammy engine. I think by this stage it already had the Vanos, and you can feel that from 5 onwards there's a noticeable surge. They're very smooth engines and have a very distinctive character. It has a ponderous feel on the road that I don't remember from the other cars that I have driven. It doesn't want to turn in feels a lot slower. But for example, on that corner there, the famous sort of, for getting the tails out on all the cars that I drive, with a normal 525, foot to the floor as I did then, I'm almost certain I would have got a slide. This felt very, very safe. And I guess that was the whole point. You are trading off quite a lot in terms of, you know, power, fuel consumption, the feel of the car as well. You can feel the extra weight on this as well. It moves around a bit more, but you can drive it in any condition. So you're just trading off some precision and some fun for all-round ability. If it was me, I'd probably still opt for the rear-wheel drive version, but especially this, with the touring, having that extra ability would have definitely been appealing. Going back to the touring angle though, BMW definitely traded off some handsome looks, and I think that this does look great for capacity. Because that boot is tiny, it's hardly bigger than the boot on the tamer saloon that my dad used to run at about this time. Having driven it and sampled the way it feels, it really is remarkably different from the standard saloon. Yes, at the limit, it's still quite neutral. So because of that split, it's 67% to the back, 33 to the front, or is it? No, I think it's 63 at the back, 37 at the front. At the limit, it still has quite neutral handling characteristics. It doesn't just plow into understeer, but overall, it just feels heavier and less responsive than the standard car. And I'm going to put a clip on now that will kind of make you understand what BMW were aiming for.
It was also at the same time the start of our fulfillment of customer requests from the USA, specifically in comparison to all the SUVs that came out back then. So that was more or less our first response.
So astonishing to think then that really this was BMW's first response to the SUV. Now that sounds unlikely, but don't forget that when we go back to the early 90s, a lot of people, myself included, thought that the SUV craze was just that, just a craze. It was a fashion that would have disappeared. So many manufacturers, rather than jumping in head first and producing SUVs, they added four-wheel drive systems, maybe a little bit of extra height, to their existing cars. So you can kind of follow the logic a bit more, but it also makes a bit more sense to me now why BMW built this. It was a response to what was happening in a big market in the USA. Having said that, still, only 9,000 of these were built, so there are more M5s than iXs, and almost certainly even less survive today of these, because although it's extremely rare, they wouldn't have been looked after as well as the M5s. If you are looking for an E34, personally I would still go with the standard setup, so the two-wheel drive version, because it's a little bit more rewarding to drive. But I can understand why someone who wanted a bit more fun. Robert, for example, he bought this and he was telling me, oh, it's so much fun. You can go out in the snow, there's no problem. It will just go where other 5 Series models cannot go. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you to Robert for having brought down the car. If you want me to review one of your cars, please get in touch. This is the best way. And do have a look at my other videos on the E34s that give you a little bit more history on the cars themselves, including one that did over 500,000 miles. I really do believe that these were class leading at the time. Thank you so much and see you soon.